Hey everybody, what is going on? This video is specifically for any marketers out there or just anyone in general who's ever been curious about naming a company and coming up with a brand from scratch. I want to share what my team did at Lemhi. My co-founders and I have spent the last 120 days really focused on building a brand that can stand out in a crowded ecosystem. And I just want to share our overall process and how we got to where we got to and the decisions we made along the way, in case that's helpful for you in your journey. So our company is called Lemhi, and a lot of people have asked me, where does Lemhi come from? Well, the whole Lemhi story is rooted actually in Lewis and Clark. And the Lemhi story is rooted in this idea of what happens when your maps stop matching reality. So we're going to start with where we ended up, what the Lemhi brand is, what the name means, and then I'm going to show you the process working backwards as to how we got there. So a funny thing happened in 1804. In 1804, Lewis and Clark set out to find a water route to the Pacific. And at the time, what they were told is that their map said the path was going to be extremely simple. Once you cross the Continental Divide in Idaho, what's going to happen is you're going to find this giant river and you're going to ride it out to the coast. And these guys believed that. That is exactly what they believed was going to happen. As a matter of fact, when they set off on their journey, they invented these giant iron collapsible canoes that they carried with them all the way to Idaho, because they believed when they got across this mountain pass, they would actually end up having this big giant river. They would take their canoes out, they would sit, and they would cruise right to the Pacific Ocean. So that's what they were told. Then they got to a place called Lemhi Pass. This is a mountain range out in Idaho. That's where their map broke. Instead of finding a giant river, what they ended up finding was the Rocky Mountains. And they found out that in that moment, they weren't on a river trip. They were on a mountaineering expedition, and they had canoes on their back, and they had to figure out what to do about that. In that moment, they were faced with a choice. Are they going to turn back? Or are they going to move forward without a map into unknown terrain and try to forge ahead anyway? Well, we all know what path they took, right? They forged ahead. They forged ahead through the uncertainty, and they found the Pacific Ocean. And we believe that AI has brought MSPs and the broader technological ecosystem as a whole to its own Lemhi Pass moment. All of a sudden, the maps that used to work no longer match to reality. The way that we do business doesn't match reality anymore. The way that technological change happens doesn't match reality anymore. And we believe that right now in this moment, guidance matters a lot more than tools. MSPs need to build a service line. They need to sell AI, deliver AI, improve AI's effectiveness to small and medium-sized businesses. This is the Lemhi Pass moment for the MSP industry, and we believe it's the Lemhi Pass moment for broader technological change as well. We love this brand story. We love what it represents. We love the name. But how did we get here? How did we discover this, right? It feels very serendipitous. And I think that a common misconception a lot of people have is that naming a company is just sitting there waiting for lightning to strike, sitting in front of a whiteboard, coming up with 1,000 ideas and picking your favorite 5, right? That's not the process we went through. We wanted to take the process a little bit more seriously. So I'm going to walk you through the exact thing that I ran my co-founders through and how it worked. So it started with us running a naming workshop. And what I did before this naming workshop is I actually sent out 2 separate Google Form surveys to my co-founders. One was, what do we want this name to represent, right? When we name this company, what do we want that name to evoke? What do we want it to represent? What are the things that are most important? And one of the things that my co-founders all said is we want to be the guides. We want to evoke trust. We want to look mature and serious. And also, we want something simple. Right? We don't want a very complicated name. We don't want something that's hard to spell or hard to say. We don't want something where we're misspelling a word or jumbling words together. We want something simple. We want something straightforward. We want something that evokes trust. And then I sent them another form that I had AI generate a bunch of fake startup names. I said, none of these are candidates. None of these are contenders. We're just doing a taste test. And I plotted those against this grid. So I took, number one, I took all of the existing brands in the space, every single software vendor out there that sells to the MSP industry, and I mapped them into these 2 grids. One is abstract and metaphorical names, which you have guardian brands, aggressor brands, force of nature brands, and sage wise guide brands, and then compound and evocative. So when you think of abstract and metaphorical brands, you're thinking of things that are names that don't necessarily represent the thing. When you're thinking about compound and evocative, those are usually names that are more like a thing that has PSA in the name, or a thing that has the specific thing they do in the name, or a thing that evokes technology, right? And within compound and evocative, you have pure invented names, you have portmanteau compound names, you have acronym and hybrid names, and you have suffix modern names. So I mapped the entire ecosystem against this. I did not show this to my co-founders before I sent them the survey. But in the survey, I had a bunch of fake startup names that were all mapped to different boxes in these grids. And then what I did was I had them rank a bunch of other fake startup names on a scale from 1 to 5 as to how much they would like them. And then I took their first and second choices and blended them to show, all right, among the team, this is where we all land. And what we found was we all really like the idea of this sort of sage, wise guide brand. And that also really matched what we wanted the name to evoke. So here's what we know going into the naming process. We still don't have a name yet, but here's what we know. We know we want this brand to represent trust. We want it to be very trust driven. We want it to look mature. We know we want it to be different and be in one of the green boxes here. We don't want to go for a Guardian brand. This is a cybersecurity industry. There are a ton of Guardian brands, which makes a lot of sense for a cybersecurity startup, right? There are a ton of aggressor brands. That makes a lot of sense. That's not going to be our brand. Our brand is going to be strategically different, not just because we want to be different, but because what we're building actually represents something different than what's already in the space, right? So we know we want it to be in this quadrant. We also know we want it to focus on trust. We also know we want it to be simple. So the next thing that we did is we spent days doing a ton of research on every single guide archetype we could possibly find. We looked at literature. We looked at movies. We looked at science. I spent a lot of time on science fiction. I spent a lot of time. I'm an Indianapolis guy, and we're an Indianapolis company. I spent a lot of time looking into Kurt Vonnegut. I spent a lot of time going through different literature. I spent a lot of time going through history. We spent a ton of time stack ranking. Here are a bunch of famous guides throughout history, and then trying to figure out which one of these matches what we're looking for the most effectively. And where we really had our aha moment was the moment that we looked deeper into the Sacagawea story. Because the Sacagawea story is where Sacagawea, the moment that Lewis and Clark met Sacagawea was when they got stuck at Lemhi Pass. That's when they made the choice that we need to go seek out guidance. We need to go, we know that there's a tribe of Shoshones nearby. We need to go find them because in this moment, like we don't know what to do and we need to seek out guidance. And so when we heard that, it's like, oh, what an amazing metaphor. What an amazing metaphor. You have a new frontier. You have a wise guide who helped guide someone to their target outcome. You have the maps not matching reality story, which we absolutely fell in love with. And then once we had the name, things really started to click in place from a brand perspective. Because let's take a look at this logo. With the logo and color palette, one of the things that we were really intentional about, number one, we love the forest green. There's a ton of greens in the space. So as we were doing broader research on what other brands look like in the MSP ecosystem, there are a ton of greens, but they're all like lime greens, like very tech forward greens. And we wanted a more mature brand. So we went back to this forest green motif that I've got on my hoodie, I've got on my hat. That is a little bit more of a mature color. We also chose a really strong serif font for our word mark intentionally because that evokes trust and maturity as well. Most of the solutions in the space are all sans serif fonts, very tech forward, which is great. Like that's awesome. But we're trying to evoke something that's just a little bit different than what exists in the space right now. Now, one of the things about that is we then had to pair it with a really nice sans serif font in order to make sure that it's still readable. Because like this is a Crimson Pro that we're using right here. Like this would not read if it was Crimson Pro. So we need to pair it with a nice serif to make it look modern as well. And then as we went to go develop the website, one of the things that you'll notice is we've got this topography texture that we use throughout. And it's meant to represent that sort of maps not matching reality anymore motif that maps, all of a sudden your maps and your terrain look different. That topography is supposed to represent that. And throughout the site, we also include various pathways and callouts that are supposed to represent clarity in that uncertainty. So you see this topography layout here within the journey of walking you through, forging your path, charting your path through the uncertainty into a new reality. So I absolutely love this brand. It was so fun to work on. I wanted to just give you a little self-indulgent peek under the hood as to what the process looked like for me and my team as we worked through this, because it genuinely is like one of my favorite projects I've ever worked on, was naming and this company and building this brand. If you have any thoughts or questions, or you want to pick my brain about this type of stuff, please don't hesitate to hit me up. I'm always happy to talk about these things. And if you know any managed service providers who would love to kick the tires on what we're building here, send them over here to our website. Make sure they go in and request early access, and then apply to be a design partner. Right now, we're taking on a very small cohort of design partners, and we're being really strategic and intentional about who we're taking on. But we would love, if you're a forward-thinking MSP who's really thinking about how do you deploy AI as a managed service, we would absolutely love to talk to you to see if you're a fit for our design partner program. Thank you all so much for making it to the end of this video if you made it here. And like I said, let me know what questions you have about naming a company, building a brand, building things from scratch. I'm more than happy to share as I go. I'm more than happy to build in public. So, and if you want one of these cool hats, send an MSP my way. I'll send you one.